didn't know what to expect when I first set foot on the ice of Antarctica. Maybe that was my mistake. It's easy to get lulled by the relentless white and the bone-chilling wind that steals the breath from your lungs. But under the surface, virtually untouchable, or so we thought, the continent harbored something unimaginable. Our expedition was routine, at least in theory. Measure ice thickness, map subglacial lakes, check environmental variables. Measures to gauge the planet's response to warmer temperatures. Silhouettes of glacier walls emerged as we advanced, vast and indifferent, as if they had seen eons pass and would continue to do so. Their presence should have been comforting. Instead, it felt eerie. John, our pilot, called it the white void. He wasn't wrong. There's an emptiness down here that shifts the sense of time and place into something immeasurable. Our base camp sat low against the horizon, a smattering of tents and scientific gear surrounded by the unbroken horizon. Molly, our geologist, was in a perpetual battle with her oxidizing tools, swearing they'd been sabotaged by the cold. She was pragmatic, like the rest of us, until now. Until the day we discovered that void wasn't as empty as it seemed. I remember it vividly because it started with such banality. Paired with Rick, our head of mapping, I was in the midst of a routine data sweep when our instruments picked up unusual readings beneath the ice sheet. Initially, I wrote it off as a malfunction, perhaps interference from equipment errors. Rick shook his head, unconvinced. "That's too strong a signal for a malfunction," he said, squinting at the console. His eyes looked tired, underscored with shadows like deep valleys cut through by time. "And too consistent." Lured by the anomaly, we decided to drill a core sample further than our usual periphery. The whir of the drill cut through the wind, joining our muted breaths as we watched the machine churn into the frozen expanse. The ice groaned in protest. Just an environmental pressure change, I reasoned. The sample emerged after a drawn-out tug-of-war with the Earth, crystalline and laced with peculiar black striations that veered like veins through its core. Sediment, Molly surmised, peering into the core, her brow furrowed with confusion. Maybe volcanic. "Never seen sediment like that," Rick argued, frowning as if trying to decipher a riddle locked in those depths. We gathered around the strange column. Its aura drew us in deeper, pulling our thoughts into an endless thread of conjecture. Then Greg, our youngest team member, suggested the idea that snapped the hinge on everything we understood about this place. Could it be a structure? My gut twisted at the implication. Buried cities belonged in the realm of fiction or misinterpreted sonar, not the forbidding sheets of Antarctic ice. But Greg's naivete was enough to shake our seasoned resolve. There was an unsettling sincerity to it that could not be ignored. When I woke up the next day, the wind had settled, a deceptive calm that only doubled my unease. We had to know more, even as every bone in my body told me this was a line better left untraced. Reluctantly, we proceeded. Curiosity increasingly felt like a curse. The machines hummed to life, starting their descent down beneath the ice with a scraping whir that sent an unsettling vibration through our bones. We adjusted the feed, watching the screen as the drill penetrated deeper. I could almost fool myself into thinking it was a nothing more than a crevasse, until the drill hit something at an odd angle and halted with a jarring clunk. The monitor flickered, adjusting itself to the unexpected turbulence as the camera struggled to refocus. And there it was, a fragment of something unmistakably not stone. Alien material glinting through the opalescent ice like starlight trapped in lucite. A part of me, the one clinging to logic and reason, refused to acknowledge it, but the truth hovered between us, unspoken and undeniable. "What now?" I whispered aloud, rhetorical of course, but it felt like some form of penance. It's the audience no one wants to perform for, the realization that you've uncovered what was meant to stay buried. We had breached more than just ice. Now, there would be no simple return to routine, not with the discovery pulsing beneath us, a secret that had not seen the light of day for epochs. We had unleashed something, or perhaps it had allowed us to find it. Either way, it had already set its hooks in us. Antarctica, silent, enigmatic, increasingly alive, seemed to have been waiting all along. Rick's voice sliced through the tense silence, a tether back to our fraying reality. "We should bring it up," he suggested, his eyes fixed on the screen with a mix of trepidation and determination. I hesitated, my mind warring between the lure of discovery and the instinctive dread pooling in my gut. Yet, it was Greg who eventually tipped the scale, his youthful curiosity cutting through our uncertainty. "If we leave it, we won't know. We can't just ignore it, right?" Reluctantly, we made preparations. The mechanized groan of winches stirred our isolated camp, drawing everyone back to the task. Cautious hands maneuvered equipment, while the frigid air buzzed with anticipation and a touch of fear. When the object finally emerged, still encased in its icy prison, we huddled close, exhaling clouds of vapor into the still air. Molly, ever the scientist, was the first to step forward. With precision, we cut away the encasing layers, revealing more of what lay beneath. What met our eyes was not the work of nature. The object was smooth, polished to an otherworldly sheen, its surface swirling with patterns that seemed to shift under the weak sunlight. Symbols, perhaps, or maybe a script. My fingers involuntarily reached for it, only to hover unsurely just above its surface. "Wait," Molly cautioned, the voice of reason amidst our collective madness. "Before we jump to conclusions, we need to." Her words trailed off, eclipsed by a distant thrum that prickled the back of my neck. At first, I thought it was merely the anxiety playing tricks, but then I realized, no, it was real. A sound, low and rhythmic, nearly indistinguishable from the restless silence of the land around us. The permafrost beneath our feet quivered, subtle at first but growing in intensity, as if responding to some unseen trigger. My heart sank. It was communicating, though how or with whom, we couldn't tell. Panic spiked through the group as the rhythmic vibration intensified, a sonorous heartbeat echoing in the hollow expanse. "Shut it off," I barked, though there was nothing mechanical to cease. This was more primal, elemental even. What birthing ground had we awoken? Rick, usually unflappable, now wore fear openly on his face. "We need to get back to base," he urged, gesturing wide-eyed towards our makeshift shelter. Yet as we began retreating, a bizarre reverberation drummed through the air, causing watches to falter and compasses to spin wildly. The very magnetic field here seemed to warp and twist around us. Antarctica's silence was no longer tranquil, it was predatory. I sensed an intelligence beneath the ice that far surpassed our grasp. The realization twisted inside me like a cold knife, carving out any remnants of safety I clung to. Night fell swiftly, bringing with it a bitter darkness unbroken by the usual stark moonlight. Even indoors, inside the shivering canvas of our tents, I felt watched. We were within a system now, a cycle that resumed its course unchecked by our intrusions. We gathered, close and tense, our fire littler more than a flickering shadow dance against the tent walls. All eyes landed on the artifact, seated malevolently between us like an uninvited guest. It didn't belong, and we were merely stewards of its sudden awakening. "I think we've got to bury it again," I said finally, my voice rough with fatigue and something of the icebound landscape's own inertia. But when my words met silence, it was spoken. Our will was not our own to assert. As if in argument, the wind picked up once more, a mournful howl that cradled our frail structure. From beyond the isolated veil, a crackling echoed faintly, perhaps cessation, perhaps only beginning. A new day would come, and with it a decision that could neither be postponed nor ignored. But tonight, all we could do was sit in the breathing dark, silently aware that we had crossed a threshold beyond mere exploration. Here in the white void, we were no longer the scholarly observers. Antarctica itself had seen to that. With sleep eluding us, and hearts thundering to an ancient rhythm that belonged to more than ice, we huddled closer, the artifact at our center, seeming to draw warmth and light into its impossible depths. The flickering light from our tent lanterns cast shifting shadows on the walls, each movement a silent reminder of how alien this place had become. Outside, the wind's eerie lament formed a symphony with the pulsing throb that emanated from beneath the ice, a disturbing backdrop to our dread-filled vigil. What should have been comforting routines, the rhythmic zip of a tent flap, the soft footfalls on the snow, now felt alien, twisted by the presence of the artifact. Rick's gaze remained anchored to it, his eyes mirroring both our collective curiosity and innate terror. "It's doing something to the ice," he murmured, voice barely audible over the chorus outside. It was a statement, not a question, the certainty in it a heavy weight around our throats. The landscape outside throbbed with awareness, a living thing made restive by our intrusion. Far from the unknowable, infinite whitescape we had encountered upon our arrival, it was now transforming, the very air humming with possibility or threat. "What if it's a signal?" Molly ventured, trepidation threading through her tone. "Some kind of call weighty. And G for a response." Her words cast an even deeper chill over us, and I desperately tried to shake off the mental images they conjured. Vast empty spaces filled with inscrutable entities waiting beneath the ice. An unsettling paradigm shift from the geological wonders we had anticipated. Despite the artifact's unexpected guardianship over our isolation, we felt a perverse sense of displacement, as if the land itself echoed our intrusion with its own cold disdain. The thrum escalated, resonating through our bones until it was nearly unbearable, and I struggled to maintain some semblance of composure. Then, as if sensing our resolve, the artifact's surface shimmered, patterns sliding across it like oil on water. It moved with eerie precision, deliberately shifting to reveal some hidden message or directive. Immediately, the air around us seemed to crackle, an electrical charge playing across my skin. Molly gasped, instinctively retreating while the rest of us leaned closer, caught in the magnetic pull of the unknown. A fresh wave of vibrations surged through the ground, once gentle, now a cascade, like an awakening giant shaking off millennia of slumber. "We need," I started, struggling to complete the thought as my rational mind was drowned in impressions sharp as needles. There were no words befitting what we witnessed, a confluence of fear and marvel in delicate balance. As if to punctuate our frozen indecision, the heartbeat beneath the ice keened, crescendoing into a discordant melody. The compasses spun faster, and all measurements of time seemed to falter against the relentless surge. John, the pragmatist among us, muttered under his breath, a string of disbelief punctuated by stifled curses. Yet no solution came, no immediate action or retreat made itself known. We were held captive in that moment, prey to forces far older than our ephemeral existence. There was nothing familiar in the darkness that greeted us. My mind flashed with the morbid idea that perhaps consciousness itself was at stake, a worming thought that clung stubbornly despite my efforts to banish it. Through the insistent push of the vibration, Rick stumbled, catching himself against the icy tent wall. It was all too real. There was no waking from this, no assuring dawn to disperse the encroaching, sentient night. "We shouldn't have come," Greg whispered, regret and fear coloring his voice, already faded by distance. Yet it felt futile as an admonishment. We were past choices now, swept into a narrative penned by something else entirely, an arc that refused our edits, forced us into roles unread. Still, a choice remained, didn't it? A chance to right the imbalance we had wrought here. Against the racing tempo, my thoughts locked onto one stubborn point: return the artifact. Rebury it in the ice, allow it its sanctuary from the light again. Gathering courage from some latent reserve, I voiced it, hoarse and unyielding. Tomorrow, we return it. An echo of the consensus settled over our group, somber, heads bowing in weary agreement. A resolution that held threads of hope, though it thinned against the knowledge of tasks ahead. Time dissolved into meaningless fragments, eclipsed by the overwhelming hum now ingrained into my very being. Words became futile agents chasing shadows as the night deepened around us, filled with the rhythmic, pulsating breath of the unsolved riddle we had torn open. Rest, I advised, though it felt more an omen than comfort. A calm before events cast us once more into an unabridged dialogue with the unknown. And so we sat, with the truncated dawn pressing against the horizon and the land seething with hidden life beneath us. For now, the silence held, and though uneasy, it was all that was ours to claim.